What's happening, guys? It's hurricane season, and there's one that's actually out right now, getting ready to come landfall here throughout the Atlantic coast. And so I thought it was a perfect time for me to jump in and talk about hurricane preparedness and things that you should know when you're living near a coast in Myrtle Beach when a hurricane's coming through, things that we need to get prepared, things that you should plan. And so today I'm gonna share with you 5 essential tips and things that you need to get ready for hurricane season in Myrtle Beach. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing you need to know when it comes to hurricanes and getting ready for things is you need to know which risk zone that you live in. Here in the area, we have 3 different risk zones. There's A, B, and C. A is the area that's closest to the beach. It's the highest area for flooding and the biggest risk area. Whenever there's a major storm coming through, that's the spot that's almost always going to be a mandatory evacuation. These are basically your homes that are going to be east of Business 17. These are the areas that sit right along the ocean or at highest risk for winds that are coming off of the ocean. There are places where there might be some flooding that takes place and all that kind of fun stuff. B then is going to be the area, most of it kind of as a rule of thumb, is the area between Business 17 and the bypass. And it's another section that sometimes might have a mandatory evacuation that comes in, but not as often. And then C is pretty much everything west of that. And those are the areas that really hardly ever see any type of mandatory evacuation. Personally, I live in Zone C. I've lived there basically for the last 20, 25 years now. And I've never actually had a mandatory evacuation take place. In fact, I only ever once actually left during a hurricane when living in Zone C. And the only reason that I left that time is the neighborhood I was living in had some issues with flooding, where the drains would back up and the roads would flood over, and you could kind of get stuck in your house. And they had a lot of overhead power lines in the area. The utilities weren't underground, so we would lose power. And I basically just said, I didn't want to be stuck in my house during a Category 4 hurricane with no power for possibly a week, 2 weeks, and not even able to get out of my driveway. So we packed up, we left. Honestly, it probably was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made. Getting back in town was a nightmare, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But the first thing that you want to pay attention to is knowing your risk zones, knowing your areas, and also knowing your evacuation routes if you have to take one. The second thing on my list of items you want to pay attention to when hurricanes are coming is you want to know and have a game plan in place. You want to know, what are we doing if we need to evacuate? Who are the people we need to communicate with and contact to say, hey, we're leaving town, we're not going to be at our house? Who are the family members that we need to notify if we are going to stay there, that we might have an emergency and need to reach out? Those are the first things you want to do. You want to make sure to get that kind of contact list in place. Then after you have that done, you want to then get an emergency kit together. Get together all types of medical supplies and things you might need and just have them handy. You don't have to have them out sitting on the kitchen counter per se, but you want to have them, at least accessible and know that you have them in the house. Band-Aids, for example. There's something you want to make sure you have, and when do you find out you need more? When you go to get one and there's none in the box. So you might want to just double check all those things. Make sure that you have all that stuff in place. Also, the other thing that I would recommend is get any and all type of important documents that you may have and get them into a safe and secure place. Maybe put them in something that's waterproof so that if for some reason, something happens and you get a leak in your home or flooding takes place, that you have all that stuff safe and secure so that when it's time to take repairs and get everything fixed, you have everything easily accessible. So things like maybe insurance claims, birth certificates, marriage licenses, death certificates, whatever things that you may want to make sure have close by, put them in a file, put them in something that's safe and secure, and definitely make sure it's waterproof. The other thing that I would say when it comes to getting stuff prepared in the house is this is a trick that was taught to me many, many years ago, and that's when it comes time for a hurricane, a couple days beforehand, what I will do is I will take just a glass, fill it with some water and let it turn to ice in the freezer. Then take a quarter, sit it on top of it and leave it in the freezer. If for some reason you lose power, don't open up your refrigerator. Do not open the freezer either. Let that just sit there. If for some reason power does go out, you want to go back after power comes back and check to see where that quarter sits. If it's still laying on top of the ice and it's not melted and down into the middle of the cup, then everything that's in your freezer is usually pretty good and safe to continue to consume. If it has melted and had too long a time, the quarter has melted and dropped down into the middle of the glass and refroze, probably want to take everything and throw it away. Don't chance it. It's not worth it to save $5 on your ground beef. Trust me, it's not. But if it's still sitting on top, you're safe and good to go. That's a little local insider tip that might help you a lot when it comes to knowing, is my stuff still safe? Is it still good to go? The third thing on the list that I would suggest is stock up on your supplies early. Things that you need. You want to have a gallon jug of water for each person for each day. They say to have usually at least a minimum of 3 days supply. So in my house with 3 kids and my wife, I would need to get 15 gallons of water. Now that's not something that you're going to just be able to go find regularly in your grocery store, especially if there is a hurricane on the way. It's one of the first things that goes away. So you want to try to plan ahead of time on these things. And what I usually suggest is, June, July, when you're going to the grocery store each time, just pick up an extra jug or an extra case of water and just kind of stock it in your refrigerator or stock it in your garage or just someplace safe so that if you need to have drinking water, you have it, because that becomes one of the most priceless commodities when a hurricane hits. The other thing, you want to make sure you have non-perishable food items. Canned goods, dried goods, things like that you can make easy. Now, I will tell you this. I would also suggest going to your propane supply place, getting your propane tanks filled for your grills, because if the power goes out in your house and you have an electric grill, or an electric range, I should say, you're not going to be able to do much cooking in the house. We had a couple years ago when one of the storms came through, we lost power. Everything in our house was electric. So we ended up having to do all of our cooking outside on the gas grill. So I learned to make pancakes. If you didn't know, you can actually make pancakes on a grill. They actually turn out pretty darn good till if you do it just right, but you can learn to make everything there. You want to make sure anything that you have in your freezer, if you notice that power is about to go out or things, you might want to grab some, cook it quick up so you have it ready to eat that day. But you want to buy a lot of non-perishable supplies. We call it the hurricane kit, and all the junk food that we buy. And usually what ends up happening is the first day that we're sitting at home, we consume all of the junk in the first 3 hours and then sit there and go, what do we do now? But get yourself a good supply of items that you need, paper products, those types of things, anything that you can think of, go ahead and get it now. Then after you have all of that stuff together, you want to make sure that you start to prepare your house. And this is something that is super important. Take the time to go around the outside of your home. Anything that may be able to be picked up by wind and go flying, you want to secure it down or put it in your garage. So for me in my house, that means running around the yard, grabbing any, bird feeders, wind chimes, all that kind of stuff, taking it down, carrying it and putting it in the garage. As a realtor, one of the things that I end up having to do is run around to all my listings and pick up yard signs and take them to my house, stick them in the garage, because they can become pretty dangerous in 100-mile-an-hour winds. But you want to take all those things, stick it in a safe place. Now, your bigger items, like I mentioned, a gas grill. I'm a big fan of cooking outside, so I have a gas grill, I have the smoker, I have a Blackstone. All those things, they're too huge to try to lug around and put in my garage because there's no space for them anyway. So instead, what I do with those types of items that are large and bulky like that, I usually take some cable tie straps and I strap it all down together with each other, maybe around a post of a porch or something like that, and it's not gonna go anywhere. It weighs a couple 100 pounds. All together is one big item, and it's gonna be safe and secure. If you see your neighbors have a trampoline, please ask them to take it down, because if not, it's probably going to end up in your windows. But those are the type of things that you want to make sure you take care of all around the outside of your house. Other things that you want to make sure you pick up: go to the store, buy some batteries. You're not going to have power possibly, so you might want to have a radio to listen to it. Or nowadays, we're all using our cell phones for everything. Back in the day when I first moved to Myrtle Beach in 1998, we had portable radios that ran on batteries. And so we'd have to go to the store and stock up on C and D batteries to run these things, because if power went out, that's what you used as your lifeline to hear what was happening and going on. Nowadays, we all have smartphones. You have the ability to get online, look at things, and find out what's happening. But what do you do if your phone dies? So one of the things I would highly recommend is getting some sort of portable chargers for your phone. I have battery packs that will allow me to recharge my phone 3, 4, 5 times. I also make sure I have the portable cords for my car so that even if those all die, I can go out to the car, plug them in there, start my car up. I may not be able to drive and go away, but I have a way to recharge the packs and keep everything going so that we have the ability to communicate and find out what's happening all around. These are some important things that you want to make sure that you take care of if you hear a storm is coming. And the final thing that I want to talk about today is that you want to stay informed. Now, this is something I've talked about before in the past. Do not spend your time listening to the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel sometimes sensationalizes things. They use the phrases, I like to call, if it bleeds, it leads, and I really feel that that takes place there as well. So they sometimes make things seem like it might be way worse than it actually is. Instead, what I am a huge fan of is focusing in on our local meteorologist, Ed Piotrowski. In Ed, we trust. You want to pay attention to him. He's the guy who's not going to sensationalize. He's going to keep it real. He's going to shoot it to you straight, and he's going to give you updates on the regular. You know, right now we have this tropical storm that's about to become a hurricane coming through, and it's supposed to hit here in the next few days in the Myrtle Beach area. Ed is saying, though, listen, it's a little too far out for me to give you definites as to what's going to happen. Instead, you need to start preparing. We're going to see some severe weather maybe come through, some heavy rains, some bands of heavy wind that might come through. There's a possibility maybe of a tornado or two that might pop up, but as a whole, things should be okay here in our area. If it is something that's different, he's going to tell you right up front. Guys, this is something that could be pretty bad. It could be something you need to do, but he's going to give you plenty of time to prepare. He's going to shoot it to you straight, and he's going to shoot it to you real. So take a look at Ed, check out his stuff. He has a great Facebook page. Usually when storms start popping up, he goes live every day at like 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and does a full live stream asking and answering questions that people have and helping you to understand how to prepare for this storm. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video on things that you need to do to prepare for hurricane season in Myrtle Beach. If you did, do me a favor, as always, give this video a thumbs up, get the bell on, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.